Welcome to season 2 of F That, the perspective shift. If season 1 was about saying fuck that to trauma, this season is about asking, what if we've been seeing the world all wrong? Inspired by shows like Revisionist History, we're flipping the script on patriarchy, race, family, habits, and so much more. Because when you see the world differently, you move through it differently. This is where personal evolution meets cultural reckoning. Let's stop performing for the damn man and start thinking about ourselves. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Welcome back to F That. This is episode 4. And honestly, this is not, if you just listened to episode 3, this is not the episode that I had planned for episode 4. However, this topic came to me and I just could not help myself. I was like, I've got to get this out. I already wrote a Substack article on it. I have already put it in on Threads, and I'm like, I need to expand on this, and this needs to be on the podcast. Isn't we're talking about how to view things differently, right? And so today I want to talk about two things that are kind of one and the same. You can see alternate timelines. I can see alternate timelines. Everybody can see alternate timelines. And we're going to talk about how you can see alternate timelines. It's not just for comic books. It's not just for, mystical people and spiritual elites, right? Everybody can see alternate timelines. But what we do with those timelines and how we behave on those timelines is extremely important. And I'm going to talk about the way that you can instantly recognize that you're seeing alternate timelines, okay? This episode is not going where you think it is. So strap in because we're going to get to it, okay? So again, let me be perfectly clear. Every single person on this planet has the ability to see multiple timelines at once. This is not something that is mythical. It is not reserved for spiritual elites. It's not reserved for comic book heroes. It is all something that we can do constantly. And the easiest way to know when you are tuning in to an alternate timeline is when you see someone's potential. When you envision a person, place, or situation, what it could become, when you see in your mind's eye a reality that hasn't happened yet, that's you tuning into another timeline. That's you seeing the future. And we do it all the frickin' time, okay? It's interesting too because we're all actually a little bit psychic, but nobody has taught us how to use those abilities responsibly. And I think because of the way that the movies and TV makes it seem, we feel like our abilities to see alternate timelines, our abilities to see the future, we don't take them as seriously. We don't think that they're actually important because it's not as dramatic as you see in the movies, okay? So let's talk about potential. We do this so much, right? We say, oh, I see so much potential in this person. I see so much potential in this company it is that I could work for. I see so much potential in this, right? We see potential in people. We see potential in companies. We see potential in relationships. We daydream about the way that things could be, the possibility of what they could be. And in doing that, we are literally tuning into a version of a reality that has not yet materialized, okay? We're daydreaming about it. We're like, oh, it could be so great. And that's cool, but let's talk about kind of where it gets a bit tricky, right? I say this all the time, and this is a phrase that I have coined, I should probably get it trademarked or something. It's like, one of the most dangerous things that you can do is try to become someone who someone else wants you to be. Or worse, try to force someone else to become who you want them to be. One of the most dangerous and unsustainable things that you can do as a human is try to live up to someone else's version of your potential. Okay? It's okay to see someone's potential. It's okay to see that in them, but it's not okay to try and drag them into it without their consent. Okay, this part is extremely important. When you try to say, oh, well, I see this person as this, and then you see that timeline, and then you try to say, well, I'm going to try and take them with me. You're trying to take them as a spiritual hostage into a timeline that they did not ask to be in. Okay, you're trying to force someone to enter a timeline that they did not ask to enter by saying, this is the potential that you have that I see for you. And when they resist, which they will, then resentment builds on your side and on their side. On your side, because you're like, why can't you just listen to me? Why can't you just do this thing? Because I'm telling you, you could be so great if you just did X, Y, and Z. And on their side, they're like, why are you trying to change me? Why are you trying to make me be someone that I don't want to be, right? You cannot hold people hostage to your version of their potential, to even their potential. Even if they see what they could be, you can't hold them hostage to that. You are constantly getting mad when these people don't rise to what you saw in them. You start to question their character, or worse, you start to question your own judgment. But we got to talk about it, right? Because they didn't ask to be that thing. They told you who they were. And I talk about this so much in my podcast. I talk about this so much in pretty much every piece of content it is that I create. People are telling you who they are. You need to believe them, okay? You need to believe them. They are showing you who they are at face value, and you are not believing them. And you're refusing to listen because you got high off of their potential. This happens especially with women in relationships. And I'll talk to you about how I did it too, because this is also going to be in my book. How I talk about potential in others, I talk about it a lot in my book. The book, which is noted, coming out fall of 2025. I'm so excited. This happens especially with women in relationships because we are deeply intuitive. We are grounded in the energetic. We can see people clearly beyond their conditioning, beyond any wound that has been inflicted on them. Okay? We can feel the possibilities vibrating in every room that we go into. It's why when you're surrounded by other people that are headed in the same direction as you, the energy feels so palpable because you're like, oh my God, the possibility in this room. And we get so high off of it. We can feel it, we want to latch onto it. And so we attach. We attach to the future that we see, to who they could be, if only they did X, Y, and Z. But seeing it doesn't mean that they're ready for it. And it certainly doesn't mean that they want it. And it certainly doesn't mean that they owe it to you just because you saw it. Oh, baby. Preaching. Okay. So let me talk about how I did that in my relationships, right? My very first boyfriend, we were two peas in a pod. And if you read the book, noted, again, coming out, and you can find the link to purchase or the pre-sale or the regular sale, depending on when you listen to this podcast. You can find the link to purchase it on my website. I did a lot of mothering of this boy, okay? We were 15 years old, cutesy in love. What would we do without each other? Blah, 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 blah. But I started acting like his mama because I could see his potential. I could see he's a good kid, right? He's a great guy. He cares about me, but his grades kind of suck. He answers back to his mom too much. He's not appreciative of what people have done for him. He's acting out a lot. And I'm like, if we just took that piece out, right? If we could just get his grades up, if we could just get him to stop answering his mama back, if we could just stop trying to get him to trying to run in the street with all his little hood rat friends and do hood rat things with his friends, then he could be this great guy. And I unknowingly was trying to hold him to the standard of this potential that I saw in him. But I did not get his consent to take him to this timeline that I saw him in. And so what happened? Then he's getting mad at me the same way he's getting mad at his mom and his older sister, because I'm parenting him the way that they're trying to parent him. I'm trying to do things, first of all, that were not my responsibility as his girlfriend. Okay. And again, I go into so much detail about this in the book. So make sure you get a copy of the book. But I was taking on this role of holding him to a standard that he could not see for himself, that he did not ask to be a part of. And I was only doing it because I attached myself to his potential. And it was wrong. And I was building bitterness because as a projector, I was feeling like I wasn't being seen. And he was building bitterness because he wasn't trying to be mothered by his girlfriend. He needed safety and refuge in a different way in me. And I wasn't giving that to him because I was too busy hanging on to a version of him that he could not see or did not want for himself. And even up until, 8 or 9 years ago, when we were still in contact, I was still trying to be like, well, join the military. You know, you can join the Navy or do this or do that. I was still trying to help him be better than he was. I was still wanting more for him than I assumed he wanted for himself. I was married and I had a child and another baby on the way, and I was still trying to hold this boy hostage to an alternate timeline that I saw him on. That's insane. I wasn't totally right for that. I wasn't totally right for that. I'll give you that. I wasn't totally right. Okay. But this is the lessons that you learn, right? Because again, I saw it, but he wasn't ready for it. I don't know. We're both his birthday's neighbor. So he's 35 now and I'm 34. We're recording this. I still don't know if he's ready for it. I still don't know if he ever saw it. But it's also not his responsibility to be the person that I told him to be 20 years ago. Oh my God, it was 20 years ago. Jesus Christ. Oh, wait, I'm having a moment, y'all. I can't believe I dated this kid 20 years ago. Holy shit. Why am I old enough to have done anything methodical 20 years ago? Is this aging? Jesus. Okay. Right? But I'm still trying to hold him in my mind. I'm still like, I hope he is happy. I hope he did something with his life, right? That's not for me to decide. It doesn't mean that he wanted that. And he certainly, just because I loved and cared about him, didn't mean that he owed me anything. It didn't mean that he owed me the responsibility to live up to that potential, right? And I can also give you another example too, right? When I was in the military, I dealt with a lot of abusive men in my life, but particularly in the military. But my drill sergeant, I attached myself to him because I saw him like a father figure. The problem, though, is that when your drill sergeant sees the potential in you, not a compliment, because they fucking torture you. Okay? They give you more assignments. They give you more things to do. They drag you through the mud. They hold you to a higher standard. If you're being treated like trash in basic training, it's because you have the most potential. Them kids that are getting away with it, they see them as regular dandies. They don't care about them. Okay? So I was constantly being dragged because my drill sergeant attached himself to my potential as a leader. Now I got it, okay? I'm a projector. My only defined channel, my human design chart, is the channel of leadership. He saw it. However, it wasn't his responsibility to make me live up to the potential that he saw in me. He did not have my consent to go onto the timeline that he saw me in as a leader. And when I reached out to him a few years later to thank him for everything that he had done and kind of holding me to a bit of a standard, he's like, well, if you had still been, under my leadership, you would have been promoted more by now. You would have been more ready. And at the time I took it as a compliment. But as I got older, I was like, what he was trying to do was still groom me to be the person that he thought that I could be. And while I feel like in so many different ways I have risen to a very high level of my own potential, I was still not cut out to be whatever it is he wanted me to be. I could have gone far. No, you know what? I was going to say I could have gone far in the military, but I can't because I don't do institution well. I don't do rules well. I don't do stupidity well. And the military, the American military, is just chock full of stupidity. Everywhere you turn, something stupid's happening, and they're calling it thriving. They're calling it discipline, and it's the most idiotic thing. Okay, so that was tough for me because I was getting my ass kicked left and right in the military because so many people were just trying to hold me to their version of my potential. And I didn't consent to be that person. And then they were getting disappointed when I wasn't behaving the way that they wanted me to behave. Okay? When you do that, it builds bitterness on both sides. Stop holding people hostage to your version of their potential. And we also have to talk about the fact that even when they reject it, again, because they will, it's not necessarily a full rejection, right? It's just misalignment. Right? When someone doesn't step into the version of themselves that you saw, it's not a rejection of you. And that's how most of us take it. Why can't you see me? Why can't you see how brilliant I am in trying to see your future? Why can't you see how special I am in trying to push you to be better? It's not a rejection of you, even though we take it that way. It's a rejection of a part of themselves that they're not ready to face yet. That doesn't make your vision wrong. It just means that it's not yours to carry. When you want to take responsibility for people's potential, you place a burden on your shoulders that you should have never had. When you say, well, I see so much for this person, and then they don't live up to it, You're ultimately letting yourself down because now you think that there's something wrong with you because they're not seeing you the way that you want to be seen. But they didn't ask for all that. Okay? And you're barking up the wrong tree trying to get people to see you and see what you see for them instead of trying to sow into people that are already ready for what it is that you can see. And I know how frustrating this is. I know how frustrating it is because I'm a projector. My aura is penetrating, right? I can see deeply into people the second I make eye contact with them. The second I step into a room, I can feel 1.5 million potentials running around with every single person. I can feel people's unhappiness before I can even see them. It is difficult to live with this kind of energetic capacity, knowing that so many people could have so much more if they just chose themselves and chose their happiness. But if they didn't ask me, it's not my work. And I be having to tell my aura to chill the fuck out and be like, bitch, nobody asked us. We don't need to be seeing into people like this. Okay? I know how hard it is to live with that, right? But you can't force people into timelines they didn't consent to. You can't will them into potential. You cannot drag them towards healing or growth. Trying to do so creates bitterness, burnout, and unnecessary heartbreak. And this is why, as women, we end up so gutted in love. Why people feel betrayed at work because they attach themselves to the potential of the company it is that they work for instead of taking the company at face value, right? And it's why friendships dissolve after years of one person holding space for change that the other never asked for. You are not wrong for seeing what you're seeing. You're just wrong for attaching your peace to it. Stop attaching your peace and your happiness and what it is that you want for yourself based on somebody else's whimsy, based on whether somebody else accepts you or not. Because I also had a best friend like that. For years, I held space for her. For years, I was giving her unsolicited advice. For years, I was like, well, you can just do this and do that instead. Like, stop doing this thing over here that's driving you crazy and go do this thing over here instead. And she never listened. I was constantly, and honestly, this is a realization that I'm having right now as I speak, being self-projected. I was constantly trying to hold this girl to a standard she didn't ask to be held to. It was a completely different standard that she wanted to be on over here. It wasn't a bad one. It was ambitious. Did I agree with it? No. But that's not my responsibility. That's not my burden to bear to agree with the path that my friends want to take. But it is my responsibility to say the path that you're going on is actually driving me nuts and I don't want to hold space for it anymore, so I'm going to exit, right? And that friendship had to dissolve to what it is, which is maybe messaging it once every 6 months to make sure that the other is okay. But it used to be calls multiple times a day. It used to be attached at the hip. We found each other in the military. But then there were plenty of fights. There was plenty of us not seeing the other. And again, I talk about this in the book about how this friendship was a no disguised as a yes. It was constantly like, hey, listen, I love you, but act this way. I accept you, except for these pieces over here. And when you're saying I accept you, except for these pieces over here, you're still trying to hold somebody else to your version of their potential. And then again, that's where bitterness and burnout and anger and resentment builds. Okay? Stop attaching your peace to other people's potential that you can see. Stop letting it bother you when they don't become the person that you think they should be because they never asked to be who you think they should be. And that's why in the coaching world, it's so heavily unregulated for obvious reasons. And I kind of like it, but also it's just kind of like, this is why you can't be buying one-size-fits-all programs. Because when you buy a one-size-fits-all program, you are telling people this is who you have the potential to be. You have this potential to be me if you take this step, this step, this step, and this step, right? If you take all 5 of these steps and you do the exact thing it is that I tell you to do, you have the potential to make $50,000 a month. You have the potential to grow exponentially as a person. You have the potential to have a business that you only have to work in 2 hours a week. And you're holding people to that standard. And then you're telling them that if your coursework or your one-size-fits-all coaching program doesn't work for them, that they didn't do the work, that they didn't do what was necessary. Woo, I'm preaching. That they didn't do what was necessary in order to meet your version of their potential by selling them a cookie cutter program. So if you're a coach who does stuff like that, get your mind right, because nobody wants to buy programs like that anymore. Start seeing people, meet them where they are. Give them the support it is that they are asking for in that moment. Stop trying to mold them into a perfectly tailored version of a testimonial that will help promote you even more. If you're doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, you shouldn't have to worry about nothing like that. Stop being so focused on turning people into your version of their potential so that it can turn into a testimonial to lift you up. That's a little bit selfish. That's a little bit narcissistic. Okay? Okay. All right. So what do you do instead? Right? What do you do instead? Because obviously, your girl is not about just telling you what not to do and then not giving you actionable steps, right? All right. So what do you do instead? It comes back to control every single time. It comes back to control. Honestly, if we're being honest, if we're going full send, nobody has control over anything, right? We just have the illusion of control all the time. But for the most part, you can control yourself. You cannot control other people. You cannot control their readiness. You cannot control their growth. The only thing you can control when you are seeing these alternate timelines and how people behave in these potential futures and these alternate timelines that you see is the only thing that you can control is how you behave when you see potential. So the next time you get a glimpse of an alternate timeline, right? You look at someone and you're like, oh, this person has so much potential. The next time you look at that timeline, I want you to ask yourself, how am I acting in that timeline? When I see this person's potential, what am I doing when I see that? Who am I becoming in that version of reality, right? What kind of leader or partner or creator am I being in that future? Because then you're focusing on yourself. And the core of my work is how do you change the collective by focusing on yourself? We focus on ourselves is how we change the collective. For too many centuries, we've been trying to force people to change and drag them with us into what we want and saying, well, I know what's better for them than they know for themselves. So they're just going to have to deal with it. And we've been trying to change humanity by forcing other people to change instead of focusing on ourselves first. Because how far has that really gotten us, trying to force other people to change? Not very. Not very. And yeah, that person might have changed, but how mad are they at you for forcing them to do something that they weren't ready for? How much progress did they actually make when you took them on a ride that they weren't ready to get on yet? Honestly, that's something that I've had to notice in my own sales. I will talk to a woman in Audacity and I'll be like, you are ready for the next stage. You are ready to come into the ruthless pursuit of self. You're ready for that program. And they'll be like, you know what? You're right. I should be there by now. I'm going to do it. Every single time I have approached a woman in my program and said, you are ready for this, she fell out of the higher program within 3 months. Because she didn't recognize that she was ready. I was holding her to a standard she was not ready to meet yet. And that wasn't on her. There was nothing about that. She was trusting me, but she wasn't trusting herself yet. That's why every woman who has come into the ruthless pursuit of self, the ones that stay for 9, 12, 18 months, they came to me and said, I'm ready for this now. They had to recognize their own potential in themselves. Every time I try to hold a woman to a standard that I see for her, because I see so much, again, I meet you and I immediately know how powerful you are and what you could be if you just did X, Y, and Z. But you ain't asked me, so I can't tell you that. And it's tough because all these women in Audacity, I'm like, woof, I get a whiff of their power the second they come into the program, but they're not ready. And I have to meet them where they are. Because if I try to push them before they're ready, they fall out of the work completely. And now they're questioning their own self-worth. They're questioning whether they're good enough. And that's never the point, right? But I also teach you guys as I learn things. And this is something that I've had to learn. Is I have to wait for an invitation as a projector in that way. You have to come to me. You have to use the keyword and be like, ruthless in my marketing and tell me I'm ready for this program because I know what it is that you're going to do in this program. I know how I'm going to be stretched in this program and I'm ready for that. If I have to convince you, I'm attaching myself to your potential and it's not healthy for either of us, okay? So kind of back to the questions, kind of back to the steps that you're taking, right? When you're getting a glimpse of this alternate timeline, how am I acting in that timeline? How am I becoming that version of reality? Who am I becoming, right? What kind of leadership am I exercising? What kind of partner or creator am I in that future? Okay. And this is really important because you have to stop trying to pull people in with you, right? When you focus on yourself, when you focus on, if I grow, other people around me will possibly see the change. When you focus on yourself and you start moving as if that timeline already exists for you and not just for that person, maybe, just maybe, they'll choose to meet you there because they're going to see how you're growing for yourself and how you are choosing yourself, and they're going to want that for themselves. Because you seeing an alternate timeline and you just seeing their potential is just you seeing what that person looks like when they choose themselves and their happiness over and over and over again. So if you show these people through your own example of choosing yourself and choosing your happiness, they're going to see that and want that for themselves. And it's going to work so much better than you trying to tell them they need to be happy. By you trying to tell them what they need to do in order to grow. Don't try to tell them anything. Let them figure it out for themselves. Just be a living, breathing example of what it means. That's true leadership. Okay? Leadership isn't telling people what to do. It's setting an example and living it and embodying it every day and letting people see that and want that for themselves and then guiding them to it through your work, but not guiding them to what you want them to be, guiding them to the best versions of themselves, okay? And they'll choose to meet you there if you set that example. But if they don't, it's not your failure. It's not your burden to bear. It's just a timeline that you were never meant to share with them, and that's okay. So just kind of recapping here. It's okay to see the potential in others, and it's okay to honor their potential, but do not claim it for them, okay? Your identity isn't built on who might grow, okay? It's built on how you move regardless of other people's growth, okay? That is what magnetizes people towards your future that you're already living, okay? Leadership has never been about manipulation. Sovereignty is not about control, okay? Being able to see multiple timelines, like I've explained in this episode, we all can do it, is such a gift, especially when you slow down and you revel in it. It is such a gift. It's not as dramatic as the movies make it seem, but it is a gift that everybody can do. But attaching yourself to those timelines is a trap. Let people walk their own path. Yours is already magnetic enough. Okay? So just as a way to close, I want you to just continue to ask yourself, where in your life are you still dragging someone into a timeline they didn't choose? And how can you release that today with grace, with understanding? I love you so much. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and I will see you on the next one. Hey, if you enjoyed the show, make sure to leave a review or a rating for us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you're interested in joining any of my programs, you can find more information at thefccoach.com, and you can follow me on Threads and Instagram at Lexi P Coaching. See you over there.